Hello, welcome everybody. This is the bonus episode for our new Yucca podcast series, our book club podcast. So last week, me and Sophia talked about nonfiction books that have informed our personal climate and justice activism. So please go check that out. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about the Hunger Games franchise as a whole. So, giving you a bit of a warning, we will be talking about the new Hunger Games book, Sunrise on the Reaping, which just came out about a month ago. So, if you haven't read that yet and you don't want spoilers, please come back to the podcast once you have read that. If you don't care about spoilers or you've already read the franchise, please continue on. We'll be giving kind of an overview of what the Hunger Games is in general if you haven't read it before or watched the movies or anything. So, that's going to be really exciting. Also, some content warnings. The Hunger Games is a dystopian novel, and there are a lot of violent storylines that we will be talking about and relating them to current day events. So, definitely proceed with caution. We'll be talking about things such as child sex trafficking, abuse against children, war. We'll be touching on genocide, like in our current world as well. So, yeah, definitely just tread lightly. And if there's any point where it gets to be too much to you, you can of course log off and then come back next week for the new podcast. So anyway, my name is Kineo. I use she, her pronouns. I am a Yucca member and podcast editor. And my favorite book format is physical paperback books. That's just, yeah, what I prefer. I'm gonna pass it to Zeph.
Hi, y'all. My name is Zephyr. I use they, them pronouns. I am currently serving as a campaign organizer for Yucca for the past almost 3 years now. And super excited to talk about this franchise. I first read it when I was like, I don't know, like 12. So kind of like being able to like grow up with the franchise. And then their movies were like released in around my birthday every year. So it was like a little tradition.
Mhm.
Um, in terms of book format, I definitely do like paperbacks, and I feel like my book sin is I always break the spine of the paperback
Oh no.
because like it doesn't like
Sophia hates that.
I hate that.
okay, I will preface with my own books.
Yes,
Whenever
yeah,
that's yours,
yeah.
because I know you do let me borrow paper. But that like the paperbacks with the broken spine, combined with like audiobooks to where I'm like listening and following along. I feel like my brain gets distracted, so if I'm not listening to it, I'm like reading the same paragraph over and
Yeah.
over.
Real.
So yeah, little combination, and I can pass it.
Hi everyone, my name is Sophia. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the organizing program coordinator for Yucca, and I've been on staff for also almost 3 years. Super excited to talk about the Hunger Games. This is one of those like dystopian novels that like had such a huge impact on our society, and I think had a lot of really good things to say about like capitalism and extraction and revolution and really what that means in a lot of different contexts. So super excited to get into it. My favorite book format, I think, is also paperback books. I feel like I enjoy all the formats. I like audiobooks. I like ebooks. I have a Kindle. I'll read on my phone sometimes too. Um I just feel like paperbacks, you can just hold them in a way that feels more comfortable.
Yeah.
And like something about the smell of a physical book just hits different. So yeah. Okay. So we're going to be talking about the Hunger Games franchise. If you've never read these books or watched the movies, I think it's still worth listening to this podcast because we're going to get into why they're so important and why they have become so popular, and why I think it's really awesome that they've become so popular because a lot of these narratives are being more public now. So the premise of the Hunger Games, the original trilogy came out in the early 2010s, right? It was a trilogy written by Suzanne Collins. And the premise basically is the Hunger Games is a dystopian future of North America about a country called Panem, and they have what's called the Hunger Games, where they select 24 children from all of the 12 districts, which are kind of like the states, to be put into an arena and fight to the death every single year as punishment for what they call the Dark Days, which was the revolution, the uprising of the districts against the capital, which is the bigger power, 75 years ago. So by the time the Hunger Games trilogy happens, it's the 74th annual Hunger Games. So hundreds of kids have died. And the premise going into this games is the main character is named Katniss, and she becomes the female tribute for her district, District 12, after volunteering when her little sister is raped. Um, so that's where we begin, and there's a lot more, but that's the premise of the Hunger Games. The prequel books came out after those books and movies came out, so all three of the original books were made into movies, very mainstream. And then there was the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which was a prequel written about the 10th annual Hunger Games and about President Snow, who in the original trilogy is the main villain, one of the best written villains
Yeah,
I've
for
ever
sure.
read or watched in a long time. So that book goes into like what the games used to look like, why Snow became so evil because he wasn't
No,
at first, and
no.
it shows his downfall, like into being super manipulative and super evil, and his arc about poisoning people. And it also talks about one of the few victors from District 12 that was that year, Lucy Graybaird, love her. And then the Sunrise on the Reaping prequel takes place for the 50th Hunger Games, and it's about Haymitch Abernathy's games, who is the mentor for Katniss and Peeta in the original trilogy. So we don't know super a lot about Haymitch. In the original trilogy, we know that he's an alcoholic. We know that he doesn't have any family and friends, and he's kind of like has this reputation of like being a jackass, but he like helps Katniss and Peeta win their games, and they end up breaking the rules in order to both win
Mhm,
their games. And he then aids them in winning the revolution in the end.
mhm.
And so his book is about his games and how he did actually have a lot of family and
Yeah.
friends and a girlfriend, and how they all died, and the horrors that he went through, and how he was basically fighting against the Hunger Games from the beginning, so he wasn't
Mhm.
complicit. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's a brief
Yeah.
summary.
We're not really gonna have time to get into, like, the complexity of the characters and their relationships so much because we really wanna focus on how the Hunger Games relates back to current day, like, the current day movement and, like, atrocities that are happening in the world because
Mhm.
Suzanne Collins really, especially in Sunrise on the Reaping, is very explicit. She lays it
Mhm.
all really out for us and is like, "This is what I'm talking about,"
Yeah.
but I did wanna say, that, like, at the end of the day, it is like a, an alternate universe, dystopian future novel, but it's also just a story about people at the end of the day. It's about love, friends, family, children specifically.
Yeah.
Peeta, he really represents, like, the fact that despite it all, we can all still create and feel love and create and feel art.
Yeah.
And, like, what gives us hope more than that, right? Like, what's the point of rebelling and fighting for a better future if we don't have that? And I think
Right.
that's really important, and, like, Katniss and Peter are really good, like, is the word foil characters of each other,
Yeah.
where, like, she's very she is very angry and not very friendly, and she's
And
just, like,
she's
a
a
lot
fighter.
she's a fighter, and she is fighting for something, like, her family is really what drives her, and Peeta too at a certain point, like, she's fighting for him, not for herself, but
Mhm.
Peeta really is, like, and for revenge too, she gets on a really big revenge streak, but
Yeah.
Peeta's really fighting, like, for love and for hope and, like,
Yeah.
for his love for Katniss and her family, and I just think that's, like, really beautiful.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
yeah. So, Zeph already mentioned, and I think that we're all really similar, we're all about the same age, but, like, I first read The Hunger Games around the time I was, like, 11, 12. I don't remember exactly, but it was definitely, like, the first dystopian
Yeah.
novel trilogy that I read. I feel like the original trilogy has a really big place in my heart, but as an adult, I've grown to appreciate the 2 prequels, like, a lot, like,
Yeah.
The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is about Snow and his perspective, and so like,
It's not a fun
it's
read.
not a fun read, it's really difficult, but it gives so much context for,
Yeah.
like, just post Dark Days Panem, because by the time we get to the Hunger Games, it's, like, 74 years, the 74th Hunger Games, and Sunrise on the Reaping is the 5th, and the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is only the 10th annual Hunger Games, so it gives, like, a lot of context. So I think personally, I like the prequels better
Mm,
now, like,
mhm.
especially with my new perspective as an adult, and the reason I recently reread the trilogy was because of Sunrise on the Reaping coming out, so a lot of appreciation for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think Sunrise on the Reaping is my favorite book of all
Yeah.
5, personally. I feel like it was so well written. I feel like it, like, wrapped everything together in a
Mhm.
really good way, because after like the original trilogy, and like there's just so many characters that we don't know that much about, but that had such a huge role to play in the revolution in the end. So like Beatty and Wyrus and Mags, and all of them get like a little bit of an origin story in Sunrise on the Reaping, and we learn about like how long they've been fighting and like why they are the way they are today in the future. And so I just love the context of that. And I think the main thing that I took from Sunrise on the Reaping is that like we can get into like exactly why this is the case, but that the revolution takes a really fucking long time, and fighting a huge power like the Capitol, which is very, very clearly representing the US government.
Just like North America.
Yeah. But like imperialist governments like Canada, the US, Mexico, like it represents that. Like why it takes so long and so many people and so many different ways of fighting to take that kind of power down. I think Sunrise on the Reaping talks about that in a really, really good way.
Yeah.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like the original trilogy, like reading it as like a young person and like then going back to read it as an adult and realizing like, wow, like Katniss is such an unreliable narrator.
Oh my
She's
God,
also
yeah.
just like a 16-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Like, and that becomes so clear. I've only read Sunrise on the Reaping once. And so I feel like I need to do like another deep dive like back into it. And I actually didn't read Ballad.
Okay.
But I have definitely like read into just like analysis of it and how like even the argument of like love versus obsession, like there's like I feel like in the movie it's definitely not like as portrayed like as like as
you're not
how,
in
like,
his head the
sinister.
same way.
Exactly, because you don't hear his like inner monologue and just like the like obsession. So I think that definitely got me. So I want to borrow that later.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll be definitely pulling some quotes from that. But there'll be some spoilers, but it's been out for a while. So.
You've seen the movie too, right? So you know
I know like the premise. I want to say I think the other thing too about Suzanne Collins that's like really reflective in her writing is she's a screenplay writer. So she wrote all of her books like screenplays, and like you can definitely see it. I'm definitely among one of those like believers that she told like the actors for like Haymitch and Snow like a lot more details
about their backstory.
what happens, because they just acted it so well.
Yeah.
So well.
Like in the original trilogy, Donald Sutherland and Woody Harrelson like captured the essence, and like even like little ticks, like like in, was it Catching Fire? One of the first two movies.
It was like in the original Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Like the first
one. Yeah. So at the chariot scene,
I was just
just when grimace. When he like winces and grimaces, like they make a point to go to him in the crowd to show that. And watching that originally, you don't know why. And then you read Sunrise on the Reaping and you learn what happened at his chariot ceremony. Like no wonder he was
diving into, so like we have a bunch of different topics of stuff that these like topics that we want to talk about. One is like the art and music representation. And so just so the audience knows what we're talking about, so there's this idea of like posters, which are little moments of rebellion from, I have a bunch of examples from the tributes, but there are a bunch of examples throughout from other people, especially in the movies. They do a really good job of like showing side scenes like Katniss didn't witness. But one of those is so Haymitch in his original chariot scene when they're doing that, his friend from the district, Luella, actually dies because one of the chariot horses like jumps and starts, and it starts this kind of like chaos moment, and Luella dies. And in Sunrise on the Reaping, Haymitch has his kind of first little moment, and I'm gonna even read it here.
The posters are like the very like public, like let me paint you a picture, a poster of like this.
Okay. So it kind of starts, so she dies, and it says, the horses come to a stop directly under the balcony. I look up and freeze, too intimidated to breathe. President Snow, not on a screen but in the flesh, the most powerful and therefore the most brutal person in Panem. He stands calm and erect, surveying the calamity of the opening ceremony. His head dips slightly, and a lacquered silvery blonde curl falls into his forehead. Our eyes meet, and a smile plays on his lips. No anger, no outrage, and certainly no fear. I have not impressed him with my performance. The reckless mountain boy with the dead girl in his arms seems foolish, a trifle amusing, and nothing more. Something steals inside me, I think. You are on a high horse, mister, and someday someone will knock you off it straight into your grave. I dismount the chariot and lay Luella down, taking a step back so Snow can't pretend he doesn't see her broken little bird body. Then I gesture to him and begin to applaud, giving credit where credit is due. Spin this, Plutarch, I think. Suddenly, the president's expression changes. He turns his attention to the screen on my right, which features a shot of me from the waist up clapping.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
Poster.
like Haymitch's first poster, and that's like he's mad throughout. I mean, we get the context of in this book that the reaping happens on his birthday.
Yeah.
So he's already angry. He was reaped illegally for this. Like
Yeah.
he wasn't the one that was reaped. He actually was trying to save his girlfriend from being beaten by a peacekeeper, and then they chose him for the Hunger Games because the other kid, and let's be clear here, these are
Kid.
children.
Yeah.
The other kid that was actually originally reaped was shot and killed because he tried to run away. So this is kind of Haymitch's first like real intentional poster, and he's a rebel throughout. You know, he has this like fighting spirit in him, which reading this book and then seeing how that spirit is dead in the trilogy, oh my god.
Hmm.
But so this idea of posters comes from something that his dad told him, and then something that him and Maisley, another, so there's 4 tributes from all the districts in this one. So he has 3 tribute mates. Lola dies. Maisley is not his friend from back home, but they become friends by the end. And then Wyatt Callow is the other one. So this is from page 290 of this book. Him and Maisley are talking. So it goes, Maisley and I go around and shut each of the other dead tributes' eyes and try to arrange their bodies properly so their family's last image won't be of their contorted limbs. On our way out of the clearing, we collect the axe, our tarps, and their supplies. The claw begins its descent as we reach my backpack. We sit smack down in the clump of catnip, side by side, completely done in.
The clump of catnip.
I can barely hear her whisper, one of us has to win this thing. My eyes travel up the long seams of the arrow-shaped leaves, the white petals concealing us from capital cameras. Why's that? I whisper back. One of us has to be the worst victor in history. Tear up their village, tear up their scripts, tear down their celebrations, and set fire to the victor's village. Refuse to play their game. Reminds me of Pa. Make sure they don't use our blood to paint their posters. Exactly. We paint our own posters. And I know just where we can get the paint. So it's actually like Maisley who puts that idea in his head to like be a victor and continue to fight back and not let them take things
That
from
quote
them.
unquote be like the worst one.
Be
Yes.
the worst
And I think also like this like continuing with the motif of like poster,
Mhm.
like in this example specifically of like returning like as much dignity as you can
Mhm.
to like, you know, they're dead, right? Like this continues throughout all of the other books as well. Like we see this with Brew. We see this even in Ballad when Reaper like aligns all the bodies and takes the Pan Am flag down and like arranges
Lays
it
it
all
over their
them.
bodies.
And
Yeah.
what does he say? I forget what he said.
Yes. So actually I have the quote from the book. In the movie they have him do like this longer monologue. In the book it's more subtle. But this is the part in the book. So this is another poster from Reaper who is from District 11 and he's like basically Reaper is who everybody thinks is going to win, and like this is the first games where they have mentors, and so everybody kind of thinks that Reaper's going to win, and people are sort of starting, the betting hasn't quite started yet, but it's sort of this like they're actually starting to root for people for once, right? So Reaper is the one who, since he's really big and strong, they think is going to win, but he doesn't actually focus on fighting throughout the entire game. So this is a part from page 280 from the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes.
Can I add a little context
Yeah,
before that?
yeah.
So in the 10th Hunger Games, it's a lot more like simple than the future Hunger Games. So like in Katniss's games, they have like mentors to help them. They have interviews. It's all very like commercialized and like popularized. And the like simply like the technology of the arena is a lot more advanced. And they, as soon as the tributes die, they take their bodies out of the arena. That does not happen in the 10th Hunger Games. So every kid that dies, no matter how they're dying, their bodies just lay there for the rest of the game. So
Okay, so he seems unable to make sense of the scene before him, the stabbed bodies of Tanner and particularly Lamina. After walking around them for a time, he lifted Lamina up, carried her over to where Bobbin and Marcus lay, and arranged the 3 in a row on the ground. For a while, he paced around the beam, and then he dragged Tanner over beside Lamina. Over the next hour, he collected first Dill and then Sol, adding them to his makeshift morgue. Jessup remained the only one left out. Reaper was probably afraid of contracting rabies. Once he'd neatly lined up the others, he swatted out the flies that had gathered. After pausing a moment in thought, he went back and cut off a second piece of the flag. This is the flag of Panem, which he had ripped previously, draping it over their bodies and causing another wave of outrage in the hall. Reaper shook out Lamina's flag remnant and tied it like a cape around his shoulders. The cape seemed to inspire him, and he began to spin slowly, looking back over his shoulder to watch it fly out behind him. He ran then, spreading his arms out as the flag streamed in the sunlight. Exhausted by the day's activities, he finally climbed into the stands and waited. In the movie, they have him actually like address the cameras of the games and like have this kind of like a similar monologue actually that
Kato.
Kato has
Yeah.
in the movie, not in the book. It's interesting in
Right,
addition in
right.
the movies. They have this sort
I feel
of
they need to like add the extra
Yeah.
dialogue.
but it makes it more explicit in the movie, so I do
Yeah.
appreciate that. In this, I think like I can feel what he's doing, which is waving their flag in front of the dead bodies and literally being like, "Look, you have no option but to watch me right now. I'm the only alive victor out like visible in the arena. Look what you've done. Look at these people that you've killed." And like he's giving them dignity too. He's giving them like a proper kind of
Yeah.
funeral service even, which in context, one of the characters in this book, Sejanus, is he lives in the capital, but he's from District 2. And he's assigned the District 2 tribute as his to be the mentor for him, which is so twisted
Because he knew
because he knew him. They went to school together. But that tribute dies before the game start, or he doesn't die before the game start.
He
but
gets rabies.
He gets no, not District.
That's
No,
Oh, you're right.
that's Jessup.
Sorry.
His character, he tries to run away and they capture him and then they hang him from
They crucify
they like
him with,
crucify
a
him
rock.
In the
as a
arena.
message in the arena because I think that he killed one of the capital people or
He
something.
killed some peacekeepers.
He
I'm pretty
yeah,
sure.
he
And
did
was, like,
something.
on the run for a hot
He escaped the arena.
Yeah, he was trying to run away and then they punished him very publicly by putting his body crucifying him.
Yeah.
And then one of the other tributes, Mercy, kills him, and so then Sejanus tries to sneak into the arena and take his body to give his body proper burial because that is something that none of the tributes ever get throughout any of the games.
Yeah.
None of these children ever get that, and actually in Haymitch's games, they send him back with the coffins of his 3 dead tributes, his district mates. He sends their coffins back with him. And like that never really happens. Usually they just send the coffins back or like just burn the bodies or something.
Yeah.
But that was like that added piece. So I guess one of those posters is the other tributes trying to like pay tribute to their other the other tributes in their games. Like PETA paints Rue. Katniss is one of her posters as she like does she hangs Seneca Crane during her like 75th annual Hunger Games and they're analyzing them. Lucy Gray, like right when she wins the game, she sings. She like there's
her
snakes
own
torn.
funeral song.
She
The
sings
fact that
her
that's
own.
a Puffy funeral song.
Yeah. So can we talk about Reapers for a second?
Yeah.
Because like that poster, like in the movie, first of all, it was really well done. I like the way that they kind of shifted it for a screen version. Because I think the line he says in the movie is like, "Are you gonna punish me now?"
Yeah.
And that was really powerful. That actor was really great. And I think it's like very symbolic of like, he's like, here's the flag. Like, this is what Pan Am stands for is dead children. Like, that's the poster that he's painting. And then like seeing from Snow's perspective, and in the movies, it's a lot more pronounced too, is that like from the Capitol citizens are outraged that he tore the flag down. They're like, the flag, you can't let him do that. And it really shows like what they care about. Like they care about the fucking flag more than they care about the dead kids. And like that is just such an important parallel to our world too.
I think also too, like when we were talking about Marcus,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's different between like the books and the movies, but I know in the movies, Sejanus is laying down breadcrumbs like at his body, and that's like a District 2 like what is it, like a death ritual? I would say. But I also think too, like all of these different examples of like giving like dignity to like their dead fallen tributes is like, I theorize that that's why they use the claws to pick up the bodies, because then it like takes away the opportunity for that to even happen. Even though like there's still pushback against it, right? Like Katniss covered ruin flowers before the claw could take her, and stuck around.
So that the
So
claw wouldn't
that
come.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
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 Yeah,
She,
I
like,
think that
circled
I've
around
also
her
seen
body.
theories, and it's confirmed in the books that, like, at some point in the games, the tributes ate each other. Um, and that I think that was probably another reason why they
Yeah.
took the
Yeah.
bodies out of the arena, because
It's
at some point,
so much related back to like what the capital citizens did not want to see in
right,
themselves, because they had to
Mhm.
resort to cannibalism
in the
during the
dark days, yeah,
And so when there's that similarity there, it gives them almost this like shared humanity
yeah,
of what they had to do to survive. And they
mhm,
don't want to be relatable in that way.
yeah,
There's also one of the big themes, especially of this book, but like I've noticed it in the other books now, is like propaganda in the media and how the Capitol manipulates the media. Like example number one is that they erased all footage of the 10th Hunger Games
yeah,
because of how that one like went down, and because they wanted to erase Lucy Gray, the victor, entirely.
yeah,
And then like in Haymitch's games, when he's watching through, so like they play a summary of the games after the victors win, and the version that they played was entirely warped and different than what actually happened in his games, and it painted Haymitch in this like asshole light
yeah,
because he did so much, right? He like I don't know if he didn't sing, but he was like there with Maisie when she died. He tried to protect Wovie. He like felt all this grief and all this stuff like for the other victors, and even at one point he like shared chocolate with Silka, who was like, it was
yeah,
like down to 3 of them, and he shared chocolate with her. And there's all these little things, and they completely erased that and they completely warped it. So in line with the Capitol not wanting to see that, like, the Capitol people didn't wanna see that and, like, that shared humanity, and have if they showed what actually happened in the Hunger like, in the games, and the humanity that the
yeah,
children showed each other, like, the Capitol people wouldn't still want to be killing these
yeah,
children.
The whole
And then
image would just completely
fall
dissolve.
apart,
exactly.
yeah.
And, like, Plutarch, Heavensby, so he is a really interesting
Oh my
character.
god, yeah.
He pops up first in Catching Fire as the new game maker. He's the new game maker, and he actually turns out that he's sort of like working on the revolution. He's like fueling the revolution and
From the inside,
from the
yeah.
inside. And then this book came out, and it turns out that he also was in around during Haymitch's Hunger Games, and he was in charge of making District Kids 12 look good and spinning their story to make them likable for the 50th game. So it was part of this like narrative building that President Snow, they show in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, like no one would have kept watching the Hunger Games if Snow didn't like have all these ideas to like keep it entertaining. And
Mhm.
I'll get into I have a quote for that later, but Heavensby basically is like marketing he's there for marketing. He's there to take propos and videos and like for the interviews and stuff of the kids. And just that inherently is like such an interesting thing that like he talks a lot um he helps to re-record Haymitch's reaping to make it look like he was reaped illegally.
Yeah.
He takes footage of the family to show the family in tears, to like show the suffering of the district people.
Yeah.
He
And he tries to get Lenore Dove, Haymitch's girlfriend, to cry on camera, and
yes.
she refuses
Mhm.
to. Like, she
Yeah.
refuses to cry for the camera.
So it's just really interesting how his character shows back up in Sunrise on the Reaping, because he's always been this like media guy, this guy like shooting propos and stuff. And there's actually a really interesting part where he refers to like AI. So I'm gonna read that part because I found that like really telling, and like it was really connected to like our current day
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, it was definitely like Suzanne being like, oh my god,
Mhm.
AI, y'all. Like,
Yeah. So he basically he's recording clips of them after their interviews or something. So the part is from page 201. It says Plutarch seems genuinely happy, saying he's going to be able to edit the clips together into some fine propos. He sighs when he mentions the tools that were abolished and incapacitated in the past, ones deemed fated to destroy humanity because of their ability to replicate any scenario using any person. Quote, and in mere seconds, he snaps his fingers to emphasize their speed. I guess it was the right thing to do given our natures. We almost wiped ourselves out even without them, so you can imagine. But oh, the possibilities. So that was really interesting.
yeah.
Suzanne was like, because AI is everywhere in our media. Like there are images all over the place. Like the most recent one I can think of is like when the Pope died, and President Trump was like, I want to be the Pope. So he made an AI image of himself as the Pope, which is like, and like I can tell for the most part what are AI images and AI art, but like a lot of people can't. And so current day, our media is being so manipulated. Like you can create anything, and you can also twist any story, really. And so I think that this series does a really good job of that. He also in Mockingjay, he's still there doing propos, and he really manipulated the rebels with Katniss's image and like used her image to propel the rebels forward. And like in my opinion, if the rebels knew her, if people knew her and what was going on in her head, they really wouldn't want to follow her. So like he did a really good job of like feeding that
Yeah. I think he
that
like
representation.
had a lot to do with like media and narrative control in general, and I think that was partially what his character was supposed to represent. I think it was also supposed to represent like an inside outside strategy. Like
It's like he damn well funded it.
yeah,
as
right.
well. And I think the reason why he has so much like narrative experience, aside from like all of like the work in like propos that he's doing, is like the Heavensby family was one of the families that had access to all of the literature that wasn't burned. And so like there's like, like just thinking about like the things that he knew and the things that he applied to like, I guess like his role.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that like the whole like media controlling the narrative thing, like all of Sunrise on the Reaping, and I think about the fact also that the readers fall for the propaganda too.
Yeah.
Like we fell for the capital propaganda upon reading the original trilogy. We see what Katniss sees. Katniss and Peeta watch Haymitch's tape of the 50th Hunger Games, and they see like, okay, like Maisley died, and like all these like it was twice the amount of tributes was like the special theme for that Hunger Games for the Quarter Quell. And Katniss sees that basically Haymitch won his games by going to the edge of the arena, finding a force field that basically bounced things off of it. And he killed the last person who was left by bouncing an axe off of the force field.
Accidentally,
Because she threw it at him.
Yeah.
And
he like dodged it, and then it hit her. Like he didn't.
Yeah.
The way that they changed it was that he did that on purpose.
Right.
He threw the
That's
axe,
the
which like he
perspective,
was dying. His guts were coming out.
Yeah.
Literally.
And so it's just such a like, so many subtle little things that they changed that just completely changed the whole narrative and like
they switched
representation of these people.
They changed a lot too. Like in reading Sunrise on the Reaping, basically Haymitch's plan going into the games throughout the training before the games ever happened, like Luella dies and he's reaped illegally and he's like, fuck this, and he meets Plutarch and he meets Beatty, who is a mentor in the games for his son. And they all collectively have a plot to break the arena, which is eventually 25 years later, how they actually start the war against the Capitol and catching fire is they physically break the arena. So that's Plutarch and Beatty's plan for Haymitch going into it. And so they don't show that in the Hunger Games, and we don't really know what they show in the live version. But they do edit the hell out of it in the recap, and we show that like so many parts were cut out. We also see that Haymitch and Maisley were working together at one point to break the arena, and then that part with Haymitch and Maisley being like, we have to break their games, we have to be the worst victor ever. And at one point they actually come across some peacekeepers.
Oh my God,
not peacekeepers, game makers in the arena who are like fixing some technical issues. And they're like, fuck you, and Maisley kills them. That's obviously
Maisley and one other person. Like,
yeah.
they're like
up with someone else.
about to fight with another couple of tributes, and then they come upon the game makers, and they all actually, not all of them, half of them decide, let's team up and kill these game makers.
Because they're the ones responsible.
Yeah.
And that's not shown in the recap. And we don't know that until we hear from Haymitch's perspective.
Yeah.
The story that he hasn't ever told anyone, right? And then also the whole chariot scene with Luella that is completely erased. Like people who saw it live in person saw it. They also have the whole live reapings on a 5-second delay. So the first kid who's reaped in Haymitch's place, Woodbine Chance, runs away. He's shot and killed. people kind of start going crazy. The peacekeepers start shooting at people. Lenore Dove, Haymitch's girlfriend, tries to protect people, and Haymitch tries to protect her. Therefore, he is chosen. So none of that is shown. They cut out all of that and then just stage another reaping
Yeah.
for Haymitch. It's just another example of how they shifted everything.
Yeah. And it's like all of, maybe not every single thing because like there are game makers over time, but the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes shows that, and like this is a quote from page 14 of that book. Snow says, everyone agreed that if the Hunger Games were to continue, they needed to evolve into a more meaningful experience. So in the nature of like making a more meaningful experience, he comes up with like betting and the victor's village and like all of these added parts that you see once you get to the Hunger Games, like the original book and Catching Fire. It's this spectacle. It's this crazy thing that's like the Super Bowl or the Met Gala every year.
It's
Like
like a reality show.
people like tune into it every year. And before, it was really they just like pulled a bunch of kids and threw them into an arena. It wasn't televised. It was televised, but it wasn't like didn't have this interactive component. And
Yeah, it also wasn't required to watch.
yeah, and
In the future,
Mhm.
it is. The districts are required to watch it because no one's going to watch that shit voluntarily.
And it's so interesting seeing Katniss's inner monologue of like being required to watch that over the years is actually what helped her win.
Right,
Yeah.
right. She was like, oh, I know that the game makers typically do this.
Yeah.
They'll draw people to the feast, all these things that she wouldn't have known.
Yeah, I think there's also a point too when Snow is conversing with Seneca and he has like this same like interaction of like why not just round up 24 of them and execute them on
Yeah.
Yeah.
like why do
Yeah.
we not do that kind of like and then again like showing the importance of like the spectacle because all of these ideas that made the Hunger Games so commercialized were his.
Yeah. And they show that in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes with
Yeah.
like he's basically mentored by this woman, Dr. Gall, who creates the mutts, the like creatures that are genetically enhanced to be terrifying or to do different purposes, and they do a lot of different things. Like the mockingjays are descended from mutts. And Dr. Gall like poses that same question to Snow throughout the book. Like she's like, why do we do the Hunger Games? And the conclusion she comes to is like kind of like a weird philosophical conclusion of like it's to show human nature, like when we're put into an arena and we're asked like told to kill each other, like we're gonna do it to survive. And at one point, because those games are so hectic, Snow ends up in the arena and kills a tribute, like he's like a player in the games for a second. And so he kind of takes this as like a lesson on like human nature. Like humans are inherently violent. We're going to kill each other. Like this is who we are. And Dr. Gall sees it as like the Hunger Games is a reminder of that. And not just a punishment to the districts, but it's a reminder of that. And then like Snow really, really internalizes that. And like that's why it keeps going on that way. And that's why I think that conversation with Seneca Crane, it's just in the movie. It's obviously not in the book because Katniss's POV. But like that's so important because like he took that from Dr. Gall. He internalized that and he upheld that over the years.
I have a quote from the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and so it's when he finally at the end of the book gets back to the capital, and he's like, maybe killed Lucy Gray, maybe not, but he's a changed man, right? He's more angry now. It's like this is on his revenge mission or whatever. She asked, "Did you think about the Hunger Games? The day we met, Cassica asked you what their purpose was, and you gave the stock answer, to punish the districts. Would you change that now?" Coriolanus remembered the conversation he'd had with Sejanus as they'd unpacked his duffel. "I'd elaborate on it. They're not just to punish the districts, they're part of the eternal war. Each one is its own battle. One we can hold in the palm of our hand instead of waging a real war that could get out of control." That makes me think of like we were talking about this earlier, how in the movies, like in Mockingjay, the addition of showing Snow's POV really adds to it because there's a part where they think that they've killed Katniss, right? They think they've killed Katniss, and then
when she got shot.
When they like bombed the building that the Katniss was in, and then it pops back and it shows Snow and his secretaries like she's alive, and he's like, you could see the look on his face. He's like, yes, the games continue.
He's like obsessed.
Yeah, he's obsessed with her, and
he's obsessed with the games.
He's obsessed with her in the games.
The only thing that he likes about the actual rebellion forming after catching fire and all the districts rebelling is that he gets to be a player in the games. Like
Right.
he gets to be participating on the arena, which is the capital, with all the pods and the landmines and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think Katniss even points that out, because I'm in the middle of Mockingjay rereading it, and she points that out, like that this, and I think her and Finnick are like, welcome to the 76th Hunger Games. Like this, us trying to invade the capital is the next Hunger Games, except for this time Snow is also a tribute.
Yeah.
And that's just so interesting.
And I think that it relates to real life in the way that not only is, like, yes, Snow is the main villain, and so it shows his POV and him being obsessed, but the reason the Hunger Games continued is because the capital citizens and some of the districts were really, like, not eating into, but they were, like, a part of it. They had
Yeah.
capital in the games, right?
Yeah.
They were entertained. They were glad to be a part of it, like with the being able to sponsor people and being able to like watch and like have all these front row seats or even
Bet on people.
Even like the
like
careers.
yeah,
Yeah.
Like it was like an
careers.
honor.
It was an
Yeah.
honor. And I think that just goes to show, and like relating it back to the real world, the stake in the game that people have with atrocities, and the reason sometimes like atrocities will continue. And there's like there's a phenomenon now that is really bugging me, and that I I've started to realize is really happening, is this like disaster porn, as they call it. Like every time we log onto our phones, we see something horrible happening. And one, humans, we are so desensitized to it, but I swear some of us are like eating that shit up.
Yeah.
You know? It's like the fact that there's still stuff happening, of course we care and we want it to end, but there's some weird psychological like thing where if all that wasn't happening, what would we have to pay attention to? And like I'm really calling everybody out on this because it's like such a fucked up part of our psyche, but we, like I mentioned in the last podcast, being 24, like I've always lived in unprecedented times, and like what does the world look like aside from that? And so I think that Suzanne does a really good job of showing like how the capital citizens, people, like some people in some of the districts, like have that weird stake in the game in that way, and that's part of why everything continues. And then we'll talk more about later, like also like the oppression levels and stuff. But I do think that's part of it.
I do want to go back for a sec to like the obsession piece.
Yeah.
Because he says this line, Snow particularly says this line twice. Once in Ballad, when the arena went quote unquote underground because of the bombing, and then the second time in Mockingjay, when the arena again went underground because they're, you know, like trying to
The
infiltrate
tunnels.
like the Capitol and like in the tunnels. And he has this same like deranged, like obsessive, like look to him. And I feel like it always kind of goes back to like Lucy and just like this, the way that
Yeah.
she like absolutely drove him like fucking to the edge because he cannot handle like not knowing.
And I think Lucy Gray, like, so in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, Snow and Lucy Gray like are a thing. They're like a couple for a while. He's her mentor in the games. He helps her cheat to win. That's a huge part of it. That's how she ends up winning. She goes back to District 12. He gets punished by becoming a peacekeeper, goes to District 12, chooses to go to District 12 to be with her. And then they get into this whole like little bit of a rebellion plot, and he ends up killing a couple of people. And he, in the end, kills Sejanus. And Lucy Gray, the reason that she decides to leave and ditch him is because she finds out that he lied about that. And then his like obsession turns into like, just like he saw her as a human in a way that he never saw district people as as humans before. And he like beats himself up for it, like in his inner monologue. And I think that that just like shows like the attitude about, I don't know if it's supposed to be like poor people or people of color or like oppressed people in general. Like the people in power, the capital, see them as less than human. And that's how they can justify all the atrocities and the Hunger Games in general.
Absolutely. And we see dehumanization, like, you know, being used in that way, like, you know, like you said, in these unprecedented times that we have never not lived in before.
Yeah. So I also wanted to talk about Lucy Gray and the Covey in general. So Lucy Gray is the tribute in the 10th Hunger Games from District 12. She ends up being the victor. She describes herself as not actually being from District 12. She describes herself as being Covey, and the Covey are like a group of people who are more nomadic, and so like she didn't grow up actually in District 12, but that's where she was like living at the time of the reaping. So she is a really, really important character because in Sunrise on the Reaping, it's revealed that she and her descendants are like the same bloodline as Katniss
Mhm.
and her father. So their whole thing is like they're being very artistic, they're very colorful. She notoriously wears like a really colorful dress throughout the Reaping and her whole games because they don't let them change clothes. Um, and she is also a musician. So the Covey are musicians and they regularly do performances in District 12. And Lucy Gray specifically, like that's kind of her shtick in like the performance aspect of the Hunger Games. And partially the reason why Snow kind of created that performance aspect of it is because, bless you, is because Lucy Gray was a performer. So in when she was reaped, she sang a song. And at the interview, she sang a song. And during the games, she sang songs.
Yeah.
One of the songs she writes called "The Hanging Tree," which actually she writes it after the games when they're back in District 12. She writes it about Snow because they have a plan to meet up at the Hanging Tree, to run away from District 12, basically. And that song has a lot of meaning
Yeah.
and it's like very much misinterpreted over the years because it's a banned song. Like it's outlawed to sing that song from who knows onward, but we know that it's banned by the time Haymitch's games come
Yeah.
around.
And something really interesting is like Lenore Dove, who is descendant of Lucy Gray. We find that out in
Mhm.
Sunrise on the Reaping. She taught it to Burdock, who's Katniss's dad.
And they're cousins.
And they're cousins. And so then Katniss taught it, or Burdock taught it to Katniss, and then it's used as one of the Revolution songs.
Yeah.
So it kind of ties into like the Covey are such a powerful force and like such a big aspect of like the revolution. And it's part of the reason it like really feeds Snow's obsession over Katniss because he sees all these similarities. And it also feeds his hatred for Haymitch in the 50th game. So it's kind of like all tied together, but
Mhm.
something that they really lean on is music.
Yeah.
And so Sophia's gonna read.
Yeah, I was gonna read. So this is the part when Lucy Gray sings the song "The Old There Before," when she wins the games by cheating. Snow helps her cheat. Basically, there's mutts that are snakes that Dr. Gall decides to throw into the arena to just kill all of the tributes because she's so pissed at how all of the tributes have been rebelling in different ways, like Reaper, Lucy Gray, all of the tributes, Marcus, like all of them have been rebelling. So Dr. Gall, vindictive motherfucker that she is like, fuck you all. I'm gonna make these snakes kill you all. And we learn earlier in the book that the snakes only attack people that they don't know. So if you introduce a scent to them, they won't kill that person. So Snow introduces Lucy Gray's scent so that the snakes won't kill her. So as the snakes are climbing up over her, not killing her, after everyone else is dead, she sings a song. You're headed for heaven, the sweet old hereafter, and I've got one foot in the door. But before I can fly up, I've loose ends to tie up right here in the old there before. I'll be along when I finish my song, when I've shut down the band, when I've played out my hand, when I've paid all my debts, when I have no regrets, right here in the old there before, when nothing is left anymore. So she sings that song, and we later find out in Sunrise on the Reaping that that's a funeral song in District 12. The old there before is like life, and you refer to the afterlife as hereafter. And so the song is about like all the things you need to wrap up in the old there before.
It's like it becomes her own funeral song.
Yeah.
So the Covey have their like funeral song and also like a reference to their names too because they have like these two faceted names. That's not the term. Multifaceted names. And so when Haymitch actually finds the graves of Lenore Dove, who is his love that dies, he finds Lucy Gray's grave, and that's the song that's on her grave too. So the fact that like she sings her own funeral song at the end of the games,
Yeah.
really symbolizes like that kind of was the end for her, like that was it. Even though she does go back to the districts and live for a while, like Snow ruins her. And that haunts him for the rest of his life. And I wanted to kind of transition into like
Before that,
Oh yeah, no, go
real
ahead.
quick, there was something on the hanging tree.
Yeah.
So the
I found the
person,
hanging tree. So if you want
yeah,
to read it.
so the person that got killed, who's like the guy that like shouts after his like love, right? That's Arlo Chance,
Mm-hmm.
who is directly related to Woodbine
By
Chance,
chance.
who was murdered for trying to run. So just
Yeah.
like the familial
Yeah.
connections and like
Mhm.
legacies of like these little pieces of like rebelling and then being killed for it.
Yeah. I'm going to read the Hanging Tree song just so everyone knows. Because we first come across this song in Katniss's Hunger Games story, and we don't know the original story about who wrote this song, where this song came from. We just know that it's outlawed, and Katniss's dad taught it to her, and she sings it as like a familiar song, and then it kind of gets turned into a rebellion song. So should I sing? No, I'm just kidding.
Ahem.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man they say murdered three? Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met up at midnight in the hanging tree. Are you coming to the tree where the dead man called out for his love to flee? Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met up at midnight in the hanging tree. Are you coming to the tree where I told you to run so we'd both be free? Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met up at midnight in the hanging tree. Are you coming to the tree? Wear a necklace of rope side by side with me. Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met up at midnight in the hanging tree. So Lucy Gray wrote that song um about Snow and like meeting up with Snow to run away. And it's about Arlo Chance getting hung and calling out to his love, who was also going to get hung for they were rebels. I think it's implied that they were rebels.
I just noticed too in the first verse when she's talking about like they say he murdered three,
Yeah.
like if that's directly talking about, because the whole reason like
Yeah.
why Sejanus was strung up was
Hmm.
because he was like collaborating with like
Mhm.
rebels, and those three people that were killed
Yep.
is who Snow actually shot.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So like there's just all of these like different instances, and like she
Mhm.
was already piecing that shit together.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that like yeah, so Snow was the one who killed those people and Arlo Chance was the one who was hung for it. And but like it's interesting because like in Katniss's POV, she's like, "Dang, why are you defending this guy?" Like she's like trying to analyze the song, and it's just very interesting. And it's also I think the whole hanging tree thing is very like reminiscent of like lynchings too, just
Yeah.
in general. Um yeah, so that song super important. Lucy Gray in general, like her song, even though in the Hunger Games trilogy we have no idea who Lucy Gray is, we don't hear about her really at all except for like a short mention of like we've only ever had two victors from District 12, Haymitch and someone else. They don't know who that is because they deleted those games. And so I think it's just so important that like this song survived. You know,
Yeah.
Lucy Gray, her memory did not survive as a person. We don't know what happened to her. Like no one else ever saw her again in
Yeah.
District 12, but her song, her music, her art was what
art.
kept the revolution
I
going.
think that's so important because I am a huge proponent of art as activism
Yeah.
and like the fact that different things resonate with different people, right? And like some of the physical posters, like painting Rue, putting flowers around her in the arena, that's what like got um some of the rebels like pumped and moved
Yeah.
through the movement
And it's
and
also made the Capitol
made
people
the
feel
capital people.
something.
But then the music is what fueled a lot of that. And like there's so many scenes and like we can kind of start even talking about like resistance and revolution. There's so many scenes and I love this about the movies that show the rebels in the districts like having different movements
Hmm.
after certain events, right? So like the people in District 7 directly use the hanging tree song as like a
Like a rallying
signal,
call.
as a rallying call and a signal to climb up on the trees and then bomb the peacekeepers. Um, or and then
Hmm.
they're also singing that, and this is something like that's really huge to me is the hydropower dam. That scene in the movie is my favorite scene in any of
Yeah.
any of these movies that's ever been made. It's one, it's showing like power in numbers and like the way that the wave of people stormed the hydropower dam. A bunch of them were shot, but they just kept coming and coming, and they shut down the dam
They're
eventually.
singing the hanging tree.
And they're singing the hanging tree, right? And then there's the scene even in the very first movie with I think it's Rue's dad. It's never confirmed, but like after Rue dies and Katniss like puts the flowers around her and she does the three finger symbol, which they did do that scene wrong in the movie, but
Yeah.
anyway, right after that is when they first start like rebelling in District 11 and District 8, and it pushes that immediately to be like,
Yeah.
so it's these symbols, these posters, and Lucy Gray's music was her poster, and I
Mhm.
just think that that's huge.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
also
oh yeah.
think that shows like the significance too, and like after, like we see that in the movies, right? And it's not necessarily confirmed that it is her father, but
Yeah.
directly after that, and this wasn't included in the movies, is when the people of District 11 put together all of like the few money they had
Yeah.
to send her
Mhm.
good bread,
In the
District 11
arena.
bread
Yeah.
in the arena.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very rare for anyone to get gifts in the arena from non-capital people
Yeah.
because everything is so expensive. I think that's also like really shows to me like just intense wealth disparity. Like that's
Yeah.
obviously obvious parallel between the real world and the Hunger Games because the capital is like ultra 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 rich. The district people are starving, they're struggling to get by, and the fact that like hundreds of people probably had to pool together their money to buy a loaf of bread just shows like how much inflation has happened, like how
Yeah.
expensive things are just in general. So that I just thought that was interesting.
And just like how the capital people are so wealthy not even
Right.
inflation, but just how they're so wealthy
They're
compared to
so
them.
privileged.
And even though like what eventually ends up happening is the district people realize that they have that power in numbers.
Yeah.
There's even like a couple of lines from Sunrise on the Reaping, like page 346, where Haymitch says, "Even the little kids in the seam know that the capital powers are watching us. I wonder if they ever consider that we're watching them too."
Yeah.
And then page 114, I think about how the districts outnumber the capital by far more than 3 to 1.
Mhm.
Even though they outnumber them, like the way that the system is set up is that it takes that many people in District 11 to send her one loaf of bread
Mhm.
versus like one person in the capital sending her medicine, which is far more expensive.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Those quotes are really, really good because, like, I think about, yeah, like the power in numbers. And there's also a quote that we had about like Plutarch asking, "Hey Mitch, like,
Mm.
why do you guys
Yeah,
submit? Like,
that's
why do you, the district, submit when you are so many more people than us, realistically?" And he's like genuinely asking a question. And Hey Mitch is like, "Fuck you."
Yeah.
It's like telling like this 16-year-old kid, like
Yeah.
this guy sitting in his fucking
Ivory
mansion,
Tower. Yeah.
like, you know, with his fancy propo equipment and, you know, his cold milk in the fridge and his fucking like library full of books. And it's like,
Mhm.
why aren't you doing more? It's like
Right.
so like that was a really like
We were talking about
staunch piece for me.
Plutarch kind of almost representing like philanthropists in a way,
Yeah.
like people that fund organizations or organizers who
Like private
are the
funders,
movement.
quote
Yeah.
unquote. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have thoughts about how it should happen
Yeah.
and what you little district pigs should be doing. Like that's kind of
Yeah.
what
It's
it's
like,
giving.
why didn't you think of doing it this way? It's
Yeah.
like, what? So I actually I found the quote.
Thank you.
So it
Thank
starts
you.
on page 103 when it's Haymitch and Regina, and they realize that there's like one like they're like outnumbered the peacekeepers in the room by 3 to 1, right?
Mhm.
So then Plutarch comes up. So it goes like this quote, "At least a little, possibly a considerable amount," someone says behind me. I turn to see Plutarch. He waves his camera crew over to record the knife training, but his attention stays on me. The question is, why didn't you, like, hurt the peacekeepers? Sore up as and all, I think about punching the question right off Plutarch's face, because the implication is clear. He isn't just asking why we didn't start a mini rebellion in the gym. He means back in District 12 as well. Why do we let the capital brutes rule us? Because we're cowards? Because we're stupid? Why do you submit to it all? He presses. Because you have the guns, Regina says flatly. Is it really about the weapons, though? I grant you, they're an advantage. On the other hand, when you consider the sheer difference in numbers, district to capital, Plutarch muses. Yes, we far outnumber the peacekeepers in 12. I think about the weapons we could lay our hands on: pickaxes, knives, possibly some explosives. But in the face of automatic rifles, aerial bombings, gases, and the capital's menagerie of mutts, I don't think we submit, I say. It's implied you accept the capital's conditions. Because we don't want to end up dead, I snap. Do you really not see that? No, I do. I see the hangings and the shootings and the starvation and the Hunger Games. I do, Plutarch says. And yet, I still don't think the fear they inspire justifies this arrangement you've all entered into, do you? We stare at him. He's not taunting or mocking us, he's genuinely asking. Why do you agree to it? Why do I? For that matter, why have people always agreed to it? When we don't respond, he shrugs. Well, it's something to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, that was such an important moment for me in the book. Like Suzanne was like,
Mhm.
"Why?" And and talking about the whole concept of like implicit submission, which in her there's a quote about
Yeah.
this. There's 4 quotes about propaganda on the very first page before you even start to read Sunrise on the Reaping. I'll just go ahead and read all of them, and I'll read the the implicit submission one last. So there's a George Orwell quote. All propaganda is lies, even when one is telling the truth. I don't think this matters so long as one knows what one is doing and why. So, propaganda. A truth that's told with bad intent beats all the lies you can invent. William Blake. And then the David Hume quote about implicit submission. It's written in kind of like very fancy language, but we'll talk about it. Nothing appears more surprising to those who consider human affairs with a philosophical eye than the easiness with which the many are governed by the few, and the implicit submission with which men resign their own sentiments and passions to those of their rulers. When we inquire by what means this wonder is effected, we shall find that as force is always on the side of the governed, the governors have nothing to support them but opinion. It is therefore on opinion only that government is founded, and this maxim extends to the most despotic and most military governments, as well as to the most free and most popular. So that, and in the author's notes, Suzanne Collins also talks about how the concept of implicit submission had a lot to do with the way she wrote these books and how that was like her thinking on like the concept of government in general, because that quote is so true. Like
Yeah.
the many are always governed by the few, no matter what kind of government it is. And the submission is implied because what else are you gonna do?
Yeah. And I think it even relates to like the quote on the back of the book, right? That says,
Yeah.
when you've been set up to lose everything you love, what is there left to fight for? Which is like, that's why people submit a lot of the time, because like they
Right.
have so much to lose. And I think that this whole series, especially the trilogy and this book, but like the trilogy from Katniss's POV, it really goes to show like the sheer level of sacrifice it
Yeah.
takes to win a war against such a powerful force. Like Katniss loses literally everything.
Yeah.
Everything, right? And
It's
she
the
is
whole
so
point, the
yeah.
whole reason as to why she even like volunteered, only to lose her anyways, only
Yeah.
for Prim to die anyways,
Yeah.
by not even a capital bomb.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna get
Okay,
into
We'll get into
I'm
District
gonna get into
13.
District 13, but yeah, I just think that Suzanne does a really good job of showing that, and like there's so many examples, like the Tesserae for one, and like
Yeah.
the fact that the Capitol is exploiting children, like they're exploiting children, they're exploiting the districts. The way everything is set up is that all of the energy and all of the resources that the districts produce goes to the capital, and that they're directly targeting children as the people who like they're harming like most directly, like we're going to
The
punish
most
your children,
vulnerable.
the most
Yeah.
vulnerable group. And it just is so related to like right now, like the way that Tesserae is set up is literally like the way like food stamps
Yeah.
and child support and like those kind of things are set up. And like
Yeah.
even specifically like Donald Trump and Vance saying like we'll give each family $5,000 per new kid that's born in the US because they want to increase our population.
For more
Like
worker
what the
bees.
fuck?
Yeah.
That's literally the Tesserae from this book. It's like the more kids you have, the more chances they have of being reaped, the more food that you're gonna get. But it's gonna be shit ass food to keep you weak and
But it'll keep you alive.
keep you alive and keep you in submission.
Yeah,
Literally.
exactly.
So
Yeah, I think about like the whole Tesserae system is so fucked up. Like you get more food if you enter your name more times into the reaping. And that like is just that's so fucked up. And it really is indicative of like what people have to do and sometimes want to do or have to do in order to stay alive is they have to use their children for labor or whatever it is.
yeah. And like this series really highlights like one of the biggest themes of the series is abuse of children. So
Yeah.
like I said, treating them as disposable and as like a means to resources is something. Okay, one, treating them as disposable is like what Israel is doing right now to Palestinian children, like killing so many of them, taking away schools, doing all that stuff, starving people. The United States also treats children as disposable. People like conservative people are pro-life, they say, but then they won't do anything about guns in schools. They're trying to take away education. They're trying to take away free school meals. Like there's so many things that current day our government is doing that's
Mhm.
exactly not exactly like this, but it's like this is a metaphor for those other things. You know what I mean? And then it's even like it's so explicit, like when Snow puts the kids in front of his gates during the war,
Mhm.
and then the rebellion bombs the children. Like, okay, I have kind of like a theory about not even a theory, but like to me, like Snow in the Capitol represent like Republicans, which are like the obvious enemy. And then District 13, the rebellions and Coin, specifically President Coin, represents like Democrats. They're still the enemy. They're still doing shit, but
They're still exploiting you.
they're still exploiting you, but it's in a less obvious way, and they're painted to be the heroes by public media and pop culture. But at the end of the day, they will still drop those bombs on your
Right.
children, and they still will wait for medics to come in to help them, and then drop a second bomb. Like,
Yep.
so I just think that she does an amazing job, and like, I didn't think Coin and Plutarch and all these people weren't like characters I really thought much of when I first read these as a
Yeah,
kid, right?
same.
But I think that's why now I really appreciate the prequels because it just like lays everything out even more explicitly. And like, if you read this series and you don't get that, like, come on,
Yeah.
come on,
Right. Like it's so clear.
There's also like subtle commentary on pro-life attitudes in Catching Fire.
Yeah.
When Katniss has the fake presidency, you know, when
Pregnancy.
she fakes the pregnancy. Oh my
Yeah.
god. When Katniss has the fake pregnancy, it causes the Capitol citizens to like freak out and call for them to cancel the games.
Like,
oh my
In
god.
75 years, they've never called to cancel the games from the
Right.
Capitol
So
citizens.
it's like just because Katniss is pregnant and she's still a kid, mind you, she's still 17 years old.
Yeah.
They're calling to cancel the games, but like cancel them and what? Next year do another games?
Right. Wait till she's not
What do you
pregnant
mean?
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a huge like narrative piece, and I think that it's also so it that whole concept of like her having the fake pregnancy,
Mhm.
which PETA made that announcement, like kind of ambush her with it.
Yeah.
PETA, if it weren't for the baby, Millar.
Which is just like, cheers, man.
Yeah,
Like-
literally, like he did that to protect her specifically in the hopes that either they would cancel the games or she would get more sponsors and have a better chance of surviving. But it also the rebellion and District 13 kept up that charade. Like they still had to control that like fake narrative in order to build sympathy for Katniss. Like when she in Mockingjay goes to visit District 8 and the like rebellion there and the people that have been dying fighting the Capitol there, they're like, where's the baby? What happened to the baby? And she has to like lie that she lost the baby. And like that is like part of what was such a huge rallying cry because it made the horrors of the Hunger Games so much more obvious to people who weren't seeing it as obvious before, like the Capitol citizens.
Yeah.
This quote that we have in here kind of like touching back on like, like the abuse of children and specifically the way that Katniss was treated in 13, that she was like quote unquote like an adult and like
Yeah.
how the continuation of like that control of the narrative and like the propos like still continued there.
Yeah.
Like this is in Mockingjay, page 405, where Katniss is like, she's trying to justify that like she doesn't think that 13 would have like bombed the kids in front of Snow's mansion. And so like the quote says, children are precious to 13, or so it has always seemed. Well, not me, maybe. Once I had outlived my usefulness, I was expendable. Although I think it's been a long time since I've been considered a child in this war.
Yeah.
And just like that completely just, I feel like
Yeah.
wraps up like all the different elements that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She thought she was expendable and she was right.
she
They
was.
were gonna be like, you're done. You did your thing. Thanks,
Yeah.
kid.
Like Coin was gonna kill her
Coin was
regardless.
gonna kill her.
Literally.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting too because like are children precious in 13? Because you could become a soldier at 14.
Right.
And even so it's like it's so interesting to compare that directly to the Capitol because like I have a whole section in here about like sexual abuse towards children, which we don't have to get into, but just the fact that kids become soldiers in District 13 at 14 years old, and then Katniss at 16 isn't considered a child anymore to Coin. And then in the Capitol, they reap the children from ages of 12 to 18. So that's their definition of children. But then once they're 16, like because when Finnick is talking about him like being sex trafficked, let's say it explicitly, there's a really not even a throwaway line, but it's a short line that says, but they had to wait 2 years. So he won his games when he was 14. And then they waited 2 years until he was 16. An adult. So like both District 13, the Rebels, Coin, and Snow and the Capitol consider kids like not children anymore at 14, 16.
Yeah.
what is that?
And
Those
I
are still babies. Like,
Mm.
I'm still a baby. I'm still a youth. I'm 24 years old, but I still feel so young. I'm so inexperienced. Like,
right.
if any of this shit happened to me, I mean, it's horrible to happen to anybody, but like, it's still exploitation and abuse at any age. But the age at which they define children is just so bizarre to me. And the fact that Katniss was 16 when she won her game, she was 17 in Mockingjay, and she doesn't think she was considered a child.
Yeah.
Then what?
Then
What do you
what's
mean?
right?
What is a kid? So are
Right.
you only a kid until you're 14 years old?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
I also think about like because District 13 has like a need for more people because they had like a smallpox epidemic or something that
Mhm.
killed off a lot of their population. So when District 12 is bombed, at the end of Catching Fire, most of their population dies. They become refugees in District 13, and they like are taken in and they're like given food and they're treated pretty well for the most part. And Katniss like pretty quickly realizes by like talking to other people in District 12 and like overhearing what she overhears in 13 that the reason that they were so quick to take in people from District 12 is because they need more people.
Yeah.
They need more workers, they need more children to sustain the population, to sustain the workforce, basically.
And the fact that Coin was going to continue the Hunger Games with capital children just
Yeah.
points, like, directly to show that, like,
Yeah.
if
The lesser of two
the
evils.
lesser of two evils, but the same systems would have continued. Because, like, I
Right.
bet you that the same, like, exploitation would have continued with,
Right.
like, the districts, like extraction and capitalism, like, where the districts are the one producing the material goods, and Coin would be sitting in her high horse in her
Right.
capital house, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
also, like, speaking of capitalism and extraction,
Mm.
something I saw, and I literally pulled a quote from like a Tumblr post, because like the discourse on, I think it was from Pinterest, but it's a Tumblr post. So someone said something that kills me about the Hunger Games is that they're supposed to show how the capital is necessary, that they keep people civilized because humans are inherently violent creatures. And then the kids get to the arena and they care for each other. And it lists a bunch of examples of the kids caring for each other. But I think that's core to it, is like the Hunger Games, like the Capitol's really trying to keep this narrative like that they are useful and that they are necessary, when all of the districts are the ones that are fueling the Capitol.
Yeah.
Even the peacekeepers come from like districts 1 and 2, right? Like that's where they train them and where they come from. So like,
And even
it's
then, peacekeepers are punished for like standing up for
Right.
for like district folks,
Mhm.
like what happened to Darius.
Yeah.
oh, Darius. Oh my
Darius. Yeah, like when the peacekeepers, aka police,
Mhm.
like become more conscious and become close to the community the way that Darius did with Katniss. Like Darius and Katniss were besties, like they were buddies. He like bought illegal meat off of her when she would go hunting, and then he defended Gale when he was getting whipped, then was severely punished,
was turned into an
eventually
AVOX
turned
and
into an
then
AVOX, and eventually tortured and
tortured.
died.
Yeah.
And like that's just, yeah, like as soon as you rebel against the system, you are done. Like that in so many ways. Like either they'll kill your family or they'll kill you.
Yeah, which like is related to our police force now. It's like why we say ACAB, all cops are bastards, all cops are bad, because any of them that are like existing within that system, like if they try to defend people and
Or do
actually
good.
do good, they're ostracized,
They're
removed,
punished.
they're punished, and like that is core to the reason that our police system is so fucked up
Yeah.
as it is now, because
You can't be a good
you can't
police
be a good
officer.
you can't within that system, and if you try to be, you're going to be punished because that's not what they want.
And like it's
Like,
all an illusion too,
yeah.
right? Because you never could have been a quote unquote good police officer,
Right.
because the root of policing is literally comes from slave catchers and Indian
Yeah.
killers.
Yes.
It comes from
And so-
keeping up that system.
Exactly, from upholding that. So it's like can't even exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and we have some notes in here about like District 12 being a coal mining community, and then there's also a note about energy control and how that's used to control people.
Yes.
And how District 12 gets energy periodically, it's always controlled by the capital. It gets turned off randomly to prove just that they can do that. Also, like, okay, 2 thoughts I have here. One, that book that I mentioned in the last podcast, Light in Gaza, showed it lined out explicitly how Israel is doing that to people.
Yeah.
They are controlling energy and they're turning it on and off randomly in the Gaza Strip, literally to oppress people and to keep them stressed out and keep them wondering and keep them tied to the energy grid too, because people need to like wash their dishes and do
Have
all of these things,
electricity,
have
yeah.
electricity and do those electricity things in electricity, like the times that they have it. And then when it gets turned off randomly, it shows people that we have the control always.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that was it's explicitly stated in the book that the capital first of all, District 12 is a coal mining community that they're like supposed it's like the Appalachian region is geographically where District 12 is, and they are consistently put into like horrible conditions, horrible working conditions. Everyone, unless you're like have a specific other job, is trained to be a coal miner. Like that's the district's purpose. And then that coal is shipped off somewhere else. That's shipped to the capital. That is not used for the districts. And the labor practices in general, people are treated like shit. A lot of the times people die. Katniss's dad died in a mine explosion. And then they do exactly that with the energy control. They control the electricity, they control the grid. They spend it on the capital. They don't spend that shit on the districts. The districts have super periodic electricity access, especially District 12 as the poorest district, like to keep like extra control over them.
I have 3 things. So there's like a piece in because like watching like all of the media that comes out of like the games, like the interviews and like the actual games and all of that is required, right? So there's like that constant flow of like energy to be able to do that
Right.
when the time of like the games is happening, right? The other thing is like we see in Mockingjay that after the dam is destroyed, like the capital loses all of its power, right? It just like goes dead. And so like kind of like what I'm thinking about that is what is this coal actually used for? 'Cause there's no way that there is this big of like a demand for supply for things that don't necessarily power the capital. Like maybe like military and things like that. But there's no way that there's such a big demand for coal. Like I think it's definitely like busy work, right?
Yeah.
And then that also relates back to like, kids of District 12 are taught to become coal miners. And I think this was mentioned in Sunrise on the Reaping. But there was like kids were the age to be like trained to do that was moved up to where kids who were being reaped that were significantly younger because they moved the age to be like to work in the mines to like 18. So kids who were reaped who obviously were not 18 did not have any type of like combative physical skill to bring into the arena. Like they just
Kept them
severely,
weak.
severely disadvantaged.
Yeah.
And like noticing how that happened, like that age move up was like definitely before the 50th, maybe after the 10th.
Right. Like as a like fuck you
punishment.
District 12.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
Yeah, you're
some
so
things.
right. Yeah, because like I think it's in one of the books for sure. Katniss realizes that like or maybe it's Haymitch realizes that like the kids from District 3, the technology districts, like know how to make circuits and they know how to do all these things. They've been trained in the trade of their district, and that gives them a leg up in the arena. Like all the other districts have that. Like District 7, they do lumber. All those kids know how to wield an axe. Like District 12 has nothing because none of those kids have done coal mining physical skills yet. They haven't done any of that.
Even like District 11, which is one of the most heavily police districts because they have
And labor
agriculture.
heavy as well.
Labor heavy, but even District 11, that's sometimes viewed as like an ally to District 12 because they're both really poor districts. Even those kids have skills because they've been out in the field.
They've been farming.
Forever. They've been farming.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, you can see like Thresh and Reaper, and then even Rue like had really like skills of like climbing and stuff.
They're all like
Thresh and Reaper were,
strong.
like strong and big and not the same as like the career districts where they were trained, but they even still had that skill.
Right.
So District 12 from the get-go really was just like at such a disadvantage.
Yeah, totally. They only ever had 4 victors throughout 75 years,
Yeah, which like it's interesting too. Someone pointed out on the internet that all the victors from District 12 won by breaking the rules.
Yeah.
They only ever had 4 victors,
Yep.
and all of them won by breaking the rules, whether they knew it or not. You know what I mean?
2 of them were in the same damn
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like this is Suzanne like telling us that we like people in the real world need to move out of the status quo and like find more creative rule breaking ways of taking down the system. You know, like they
Like,
being
fuck
like
your
the US
snakes.
government like literally have us killing each other,
Right.
whether that's like metaphorically or actually, whether that's like from being online doing all this stuff. They have us doing that, and we like need to win by breaking the rules and breaking out of the cycle.
And
Yeah.
the reason that the games ended was because, like, of an extra super rule breaking, Katniss physically breaking the arena.
Mhm.
And that's super significant because, like, that broke the whole games. Like, she
Yeah.
didn't just, like, win those games by doing that. Like, she saved a bunch of people who were still left in the
Mhm.
games, and people made it out, and that was the last Hunger Games,
So interesting. Katniss saved people in both of her games.
She
Like
did,
she ended
yeah.
up not
And then
being
even
the only one.
in the first games, she saved PETA by breaking the rules and
Yeah.
saying, "Well, if you have to make us choose one victor, we're both gonna die, so
Yeah.
you don't get what you wanted." Um, I think, going into breaking the rules thing and how, like, that's kind of how we have to fight the system is by not complying with it and not playing that game. There's like some interesting contradictions there, and that's also brought up in the book. This is in Catching Fire, page 147, where it's before the second games start, but Katniss has figured out that some of the districts are uprising
Mhm.
against the peacekeepers in the capital, and she's like, "We need to do that too." In the end, she figures out that we need to do that too, and she's kind of figured out that she's become the face of that rebellion. And then basically Gale gets punished for existing. No, he gets punished for
Hunting.
hunting, and also, like, extra punished for being associated with her.
Yeah.
And they bring in, like, another layer of new peacekeepers that are way more violent than the ones they've had before. Um so this is about uprising and breaking the law, breaking the rules. An uprising requires breaking the law, thwarting authority. We've done that our whole lives, or our families have. Poaching, trading on the black market, mocking the Capitol in the woods. But for most people in District 12, a trip to buy something at the Hob, which is the black market, would be too risky. And I expect them to assemble in the square with bricks and torches. Even the sight of PETA and me is enough to make people pull their children away from the windows and draw the curtains tightly. And that's like, yeah, like, people were so afraid of rebelling. And I think that that is so real to
Mhm.
today, because, like, a lot of us know either because our existences are breaking the law, like, queer people, um, people practicing their religions, like, resisting occupation, like, that's breaking the law.
Mhm.
And because a lot of us have existed like that for so long, it's really hard to picture that other side of, like, being so afraid
Mhm.
to break the law and to win by doing that.
Yeah. And like I also like that in Sunrise on the Reaping it shows that Haymitch also tried to start a rebellion, you know what I mean? And there's this post that I found online. They said like just having the stark realization that the failed act of rebellion was 20 years before Katniss volunteered. That begs the question of whether or not there were more attempts. Did Joanna suffer the same fate as Haymitch? Did the Capitol lie and say she was hidden the entirety of her games because she was given a similar failed assignment from Beatty? Or even Wyrus, who won
Yeah.
like the 49th game. So I just feel like this is kind of again Suzanne showing us that like there are probably going to be a lot of failed attempts at
Yeah.
rebellion, and we're going to have a lot of different martyrs or leaders in this rebellion, but we like need to keep trying because eventually it will work. And we have tried though, again too, like what you just mentioned. I mean, like even like the Stonewall riots like was the beginning of some sort of like queer rebellion, and like give like freedoms and stuff, and now
Right.
that's being taken away again,
Right.
right?
We
And
didn't
so
get
we didn't
legal
get that
marriage
much,
until
right?
decades later.
So I think it's like a direct comparison to our right now, where like there is a history of rebellion, and that's like what we were talking about last week in our podcast with all of these books with like reading your history. Reading your history is really important because then you can
Yeah.
see what's been tried before,
Yep.
and we know that we have to keep trying because
Mhm.
like it has to get like we have to fix something. It has to get better. Like we can't keep living like this.
Mhm.
And I think that's also like the realization that they come to during this series is like Katniss is like we can't fucking keep doing this,
Yeah.
and they even thought that in Haymitch's times,
Yeah.
in Lucy Gray's time. So I think
Yeah.
it's just her showing us to like keep trying, keep
Right.
fighting. I think she's talking I think that Suzanne is talking directly to us and trying to give us some hope and
Absolutely. I
stuff.
think,
So
yeah, all of, like, Sunrise on the Reaping with, like, revealing that Beatty had a lot to do with
ugh.
Haymitch's rebellion plot, and then obviously he was on the, like, inside team of kind of tricking Katniss to break the
Mhm.
arena and catching fire later on. Like, it makes you wonder, like, okay, did Plutarch tell Beatty to try and break the arena during his games? Did he tell someone before that to try and break his games? And like Katniss was the one who eventually it clicked and it worked, and her like almost like her marketing worked more. But in Sunrise on the Reaping, at the end of the book, Haymitch has lost everything. His mom, his brother, all his fellow tributes,
His best
his
friend,
best friend, his girlfriend. He's doing really, really bad, and he knows that it's because he tried to rebel and he failed. He failed at that. He ended up winning the games, but like no one ever wins the games. They say that a lot. The victors are required to engage with the games long for the rest of their lives. They win riches and they win, like, they don't have to starve to death anymore. But they still have to like mentor tributes year after year. And so the end of the book, Haymitch is kind of like losing his mind a little bit and like hallucinates Lenore Dove like throughout the rest of his life. It's basically said that he sees her for like the rest of his life, which is really, really heartbreaking and just adds so much more depth to his character. But there's this conversation on page 337 between him and Plutarch, because Plutarch was the one who told him to do the rebellion plot. Him and Beatty were like working together and they were like, hey, Mitch is our guy on the inside. He's our tribute. He's going to go find this thing and break it. There was a whole plan. And Beatty's son was then killed also as punishment for being part of the rebellion plot in those games. And then Wyrus and Mags, who were Haymitch's mentors, who were then also in later games, were tortured after this because it's implied that they were in on it as well. And so I'm just going to kind of read this whole conversation. So Haymitch asks, how is it you're looking so well, Plutarch? Wyrus and Mags were tortured, right? And I'm guessing Beatty's dead. Beatty's too valuable to kill. That's interesting. I thought he'd have killed himself. He can't. His wife's pregnant. Besides, he wouldn't let Ampert down that way. Oh, I see. He's going to overthrow the capital, is he? Maybe one day, but we can't any of us do it alone. You demonstrated a lot of nerve and intelligence in that arena. We need your help. Me? I say in disbelief. I am living proof that the capital always wins. I tried to keep that sun from rising on another reaping day. I tried to change things, and now everybody's dead. You don't want me. And I don't want him. I don't want help from anybody in the capital ever again. I can never trust them. We do want you. You shook up the capital, both figuratively and literally, with that earthquake. You were capable of imagining a different future. And maybe it won't be realized today. Maybe not in our lifetime. Maybe it will take generations. We're all part of a continuum. Does that make it pointless? And Haymitch says, I just don't know. But I do know you need someone different from me. No, Haymitch, we need someone exactly like you. Just luckier, I say. Luckier or with better timing. Having an army at their back wouldn't hurt. Sure, that would have helped. Where are you going to get an army, Plutarch? If we can't find one, we'll have to build one. So that I marked the hell out of this page in my book. That stuck with me so hard. Like is it pointless just because it's gonna take generations and hundreds of us dying? Like, is it pointless? And Haymitch is like, I just don't know. And that's kind of where I'm at. I'm like, fuck. Is it? I don't know. And like, is it gonna take someone else? Is it gonna take another Haymitch, another Katniss, another Beatty to be that like rallying cry, I guess, and like be that symbol? And where's that army coming from? We're gonna have to build that army. Yeah, like, oh my goodness.
And it's gonna be, the thing too is like, it's gonna be District 12 people. It's gonna be like us, like the
most
vulnerable. And something that like something I was thinking about is District 12 people at a point had literally nothing to lose because they had nothing. Plutarch had nothing to lose because he had everything almost, right? So it's almost like we got to tie together with those people who have a lot of resources, have everything, and us who have nothing and who have to fight for it, and like we have to be the ones to like band together. So y'all who have everything, you guys
fund
who
us
are
Jesus
able
Christ.
to make donations, make funds, make support. Like, of course we all have something to lose, but like we have so much more to gain if we rebel and if we fight the system. So
and we have to do it all together is the other thing too.
Yes.
Yeah. I saw a post that I don't know how I feel about it. I want to ask y'all how you feel about it.
Okay.
But someone said that basically Plutarch represents like that sometimes, like, to win the revolution that you have to work with people whose politics are less than ideal. because Plutarch is a very morally gray person. Like, he still very much exploits children. He's a game maker. He has that mindset of like a trickster, of fucking people over, super violent ends. And those methods and those tactics are what win the war for them. And I don't know how I feel about that.
know.
What do y'all think? Like, we have to work with people whose politics are less than ideal. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. Again, like I said, because I think that Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes shows that Plutarch's family has always had a lot and always been really rich. And like Zeph mentioned earlier, like they saved literature, they saved all the writings. And like the reason that Snow clings to his power so much, like Snow and like Coin, is because they came up from nothing. Coin came up from this district that was bombed and buried underground. Snow was about to get kicked out of his house and
He
go
was poor and
bankrupt. He was
starving.
poor and starving. He fought tooth and nail to get to that power and to get to that top point. Plutarch and the Heavens Bees, like, never had to do that.
They
So
were
I
already
do
there.
They were already there. So I do find that interesting, and personally, I don't feel like those people who are already there really get it and are really gonna support us.
Exactly.
But it does show like Plutarch did support in a different way. I mean, he was kind of slimy about it, but he got that shit done. So I
Right.
don't know. My answer is who knows. But
What do you think, Zeph?
My answer is also who knows, because I feel like it's kind of like this boiling to this like place of like, does the end justify the means? But also
Yeah.
it depends on which ends, right?
Right.
Like Katniss, like, took out Coin, and we expected that, right? Plutarch even expected that.
Uh-huh.
Like, let's be real. And yeah, I think it just depends.
Yeah.
I think it
Yeah.
depends on what ends are, like, are we fighting for the same ends?
Right.
yeah,
Because I think Plutarch is fighting for power at the end of the day. Like,
Exactly.
I think he had some kind of morality. Otherwise, he would have just stuck with the capital and not ever done anything. But like, he wanted to be close to Coin, right? Like, he wanted to be close to the president of like the new Panem. And then even in the end, when after Coin's dead, they elect a new president, he's still at her right hand.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, like, he's still, like, he never really loses anything except for his original capital status, which he barely really had to sacrifice
At all,
like,
really. Yeah.
Yeah.
His proximity to power was never challenged
Yeah.
at all.
Right.
What I like about Katniss though, as like a heroine, like her and Hey Mitch and Peta, is all they really wanted at the end was peace and to go home.
Right.
So it's like, if those people are gonna help us get to that point where we have some goddamn peace and we can go home and have our babies, raise geese, like do
Right.
whatever the fuck we want, stay in power, Plutarch, whatever. Like, you go do that and you help me fight for that when like
Right.
what I want is to be at peace and to go home and like just live.
Yeah.
If you are fighting for that, for your power, if we end up at the same spot and like it's a better world, like better for all of us.
Yeah.
So I think that's maybe my thought about it, is like, if you're fighting for power, great.
Yeah.
Or like Gale, who ended up being like he went to District 2 and became a commander or whatever. Good for you, Gale. You got your fucking thing. I
You
just
got
wanna
your
go
little power
home
revenge trip.
and sing in my meadow
Right.
with like my Peta and raise my geese with my Hamish. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
That's real.
maybe.
That is so real.
I think it also depends on, like, yes, this proximity to power, right? But how is that power continuing to be
Yeah.
upheld? Like, what is
Mhm.
different from like the capital regime under Snow versus whoever the fuck this new
Right.
president is, and how they're governing?
Right.
Right.
Okay. So there's a lot in Mockingjay about like a little bit of more context about how the districts are being exploited, and a little bit more on District 2 specifically, because they are the last district to rebel against the
Yeah.
capital. They're on the capital side for a good chunk of it. Every single other district is actively at war against the capital. So this is when Plutarch is basically explaining to Katniss where they're at with District 2 and why they need to get control of that military. So Gale asks, if we win, who would be in charge of the government? Everyone, Plutarch tells him. We're going to form a republic where the people of each district and the capital can elect their own representatives to be their voice in a centralized government. Don't look so suspicious. It's worked before. In books, Haymitch mutters. In history books, says Plutarch. And if our ancestors could do it, then we can too. And this is Katniss's inner monologue again. Frankly, our ancestors don't seem much to brag about. I mean, look at the state they left us in, with the wars and the broken planet. Clearly, they didn't care about what would happen to the people who came after them. But this republic idea sounds like an improvement over our current government.
It's interesting that direct comparison because, I mean, Suzanne knew what she was doing when she named him President Snow.
Right.
President Snow, President Trump, President Coin. Like,
Yeah,
yes,
they didn't say minister
they
or
didn't say
something.
minister, they didn't say king.
It says
you know
like
what
it's
I
gonna
mean?
Western like representation of like
Yeah.
democracy.
Mhm.
Yeah, like that's our version. Like we have
Even though he
President
wasn't
Snow.
elected.
Yeah.
Right. But it is just, I mean, and then when Coin is like, I'm gonna just like take the burden of being the interim president, you know, it's like, so you were gonna do that election, but then she just jumped in and went ahead and
Yeah.
did that, right?
Right.
It's kind of like how we have it set up, like if our president dies or is killed, we have a vice president, and then from there we have layers of people. Like we don't hold another election.
Right.
Like that same cabinet and same group of people. So I don't know. I mean,
Centralized government, quote unquote. And you think about like the like electing representatives thing, like that's like Congress is what he's referencing here.
Yeah.
And like that's not that working for us right
No.
now, fucking obviously. Like
Yeah.
our representatives don't really represent us. They come from powerful elite. And I think about, we talked about this in one of the past podcast episodes, but how like our New Mexico legislature is unpaid, so that all of those legislators have to basically, in order to get elected, first of all, you have to have a bunch of money to do a campaign
run the fucking
to run the fucking thing. And you also have to be in a position where either you can leave your job for 3 months out of the year to go to the legislative session, or just have a bunch of money.
Yeah.
And like that just inherently puts people with a lot more privilege than people who need to be represented in government in those positions of power.
Also, it's like the electoral college and the way that
Right.
it's actually set up. Like it's
Right.
not
Free
it's
elections.
it's not a free election because they set the systems up. They gerrymander our districts. They do all like this voter suppression. So
Yeah.
like, and this is like, you know, the whatever, the American Revolution, like similar starts, right? There's like a group of people who put this idea together and they had this idealistic view of how it was going to work and it was going to be great, everyone's going to be represented, and then they weren't. It didn't work out.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, my personal belief is like it's been long enough that we need to reconsider it and remake it. And even if we just took the electoral college away and made it be more of a actual like population, like that would more of a popular vote, like that would already kind of help us move us in the right direction. It needs to be completely restructured and reorganized and burned to the ground.
Yeah.
But even just that, like making it a popular election rather electoral college votes,
Yeah.
would like significantly
Change a
improve
lot,
it. So
for sure.
it's an interesting thing where Plutarch is like, it worked in the past, but like we're all thinking about how that's working out for us.
Right,
now.
literally. It's just as like a subtle, like offhand comment that Katniss makes.
Yeah.
Like, she's like, well, clearly they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
Like, look at what they left us with.
Like Plutarch is giving like reformist.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like we can do like what our ancestors, like we can, like it's giving like when people are like, we lost the American tradition, like what happened to the American dream, like what happened to the America I used to know. Like this has always been America.
Yeah.
This has always been Panet. This has always been what it is.
Yeah.
You're just seeing it now because it's right in front of your face and affecting you.
Yeah.
There's also, I want to read this quote. This really hit home with me about the extraction piece. So this is also in Mockingjay. She says, President Snow once admitted to me that the Capitol was fragile. At the time, I didn't know what he meant. It was hard to see clearly because I was so afraid. Now I'm not. The Capitol's fragile because it depends on the districts for everything. Food, energy, even the peacekeepers that police us. If we declare our freedom, the Capitol collapses. So that's very directly tied, you know, directly how our society works today. Like food, energy, the police, like that's our people. That is, all of those things come from us. And if like say all the police in the whole country decided to stop, we wouldn't have a fight against like the Capitol. Because that's us.
I think that also like relates back to like the whole like means of production thing and how each district is like supplies like the capital being like the heart and all of that.
Yeah.
Like even
exactly. Like Snow says it himself, like capital is the beating heart of Panem and the districts are the blood flow providing to it. And it's really logic that doesn't quite hold up even to his own people. Like, because when he says it, he's like, but like, you know, we still need the heart. Like, no, we don't. Like, because you govern us, because you throw us in an arena every year, like, fuck you. Yeah. So I also saw another quote about how many people are swamped in debt in the Capitol. That was really interesting. So District 2 is where they turn for additional troops because the capital people are not fit for military duty. And it talks about how after the Dark Days and the supposed destruction of 13, District 2 became the capital's new center of defense. And it trains and supplies peacekeepers. There was another quote about how District 2 um, people fall into the propaganda.
Yeah. Like districts 1, 2, and 4, like the career districts, are the
Yeah,
most wealthy and the closest to the capital in terms of privilege and status, but like they're still exploited and viewed as subhuman.
exactly.
And, like there's so many examples of that, but like I think Finnick is a really good example. Is like he was a career technically. Him and Annie were both careers. Like Annie
Mhm.
literally volunteered for her games.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
but then they still exploited them. Like they still
Right.
send them to the games. They still like sex traffic the children, like the winners of the Hunger Games afterwards. Like they like train their whole life and volunteer for the games. And
Yeah.
it's this like immense like not privilege, but it's like an honor for
Yeah.
them, you know, and then they're still viewed as subhuman. So the
Yeah.
capital really got in their heads.
So I found the quote. So they're in District 2 and she's kind of providing context about it. By the other district standards, the capital babied the inhabitants here. Just by looking at the District 2 rebels, you can tell they were decently fed and cared for in childhood. Some did end up as quarry and mine workers. Others were educated for jobs in the Nut, which was a military base, or funneled into the ranks of peacekeepers, trained young and hard for combat. The Hunger Games were an opportunity for wealth and a kind of glory not seen elsewhere. Otherwise, of course, the people of Two swallowed the capital's propaganda more easily than the rest of us, embraced their ways. But for all that, at the end of the day, they were still slaves. And if that was lost on the citizens who became peacekeepers or worked in the Nut, it was not lost on the stonecutters who formed the backbone of the resistance here.
I was gonna say that that's another example of like District 12's coal mining being busy work
Right.
because District 2 literally had coal miners and quarry workers and
Yeah.
stone cutters. Like that already existed in District 2. What did they need that level and that
Right.
amount of coal for?
Right.
What were they making them in District 12 do then? What was the point?
It also makes you think about like how far they over the years would have had to go to find more coal because like
Yeah.
the town never moves.
Mhm.
The center itself of District 12, where the hanging tree is, and all of the
Hello. We had a brief interruption, but we're gonna wrap it up here with
yeah.
a little talk about the scale of retaliation.
Yes, and just kind of how that relates to Palestine. So I have a quote from page 323 of Sunrise on the Reaping. It's kind of like a long excerpt, but definitely think this is like super, super important. So, right now, Hamish and Silka and Welly just had their sort of like standoff, and Silka just killed Welly. So, 283. Rounding a final clump of saplings, I freeze in horror at what awaits. Silka stands like a statue, her snot green outfit splattered in bright red. In her right hand, her axe. Her left holds Welly's head, eyes still open, mouth agape. The only movement, the only sound comes from the blood dripping onto the pine needles on the forest floor.
Mm.
Welly's body lies crumpled in a heap a few feet away. The shiny silver bicycle bell, the blowgun, the child-sized boots, the tiny knife in her bird claw, dove-colored feathers. Headless baby chick. I could live 10,000 years and never erase this sight from my memory.
Mm.
What did you do? I hiss. Silka makes an effort to focus on me. She holds up Welly's head defensively. She attacked me. Now I notice the poison dart hanging harmlessly from Silka's blousey sleeve. Welly tried to protect herself. Upheld the newcomer honor. Probably barely had the air to get the dart free of the gun. I abandoned her, as she feared I would. Blinded by my desire to paint my poster, I
Mm.
left the real treasure unattended. She had to go. You have to go, Silka continues. It's the only way I get back to my people. We all have people, I say. You think yours will ever be able to forget this? I know mine won't. Write me off, Sid. Disown me. Spit when you hear my name. Failing at breaking the arena is nothing in the face of this. I'll tell how it was when I get home, she says. Oh, you're not going home, Silka. I pull the axe from my belt. We're neither of us going home. I will kill her, and Snow will kill me. These games will have no victor. The second quarter quell poster. It helps the way she tosses Welly's head aside with no regard or compassion for her, even in death. Helps, too, to see a smear of chocolate high on her cheekbone where she must have wiped the tears away last night during our one-sided truce. And finally, it helps when she says, I will be the one to honor the capital.
Mm.
Ugh.
That whole passage says a lot. It says about, because just she's for a career district, right?
Yeah.
So she has the mindset of like, not only is she gonna get to go home to her family if she wins, she's gonna bring honor to the capital, and she doesn't care who she has to kill to get there. And she feels like she's justified in cutting off Welly's head
And just holding it
and
while it's ripping.
decapitating a child. The insane amount of force that you need to decapitate someone with an axe when you're already like a kid traumatized running around. Like she had to use an insane amount of force.
Like Welly was what, 12?
Yeah.
Yeah. She was also like dying of malnutrition in
Yeah.
the games too.
And she shot her with a poison dart. Clearly it didn't do anything.
And she missed.
And
she missed.
she missed.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I saw, the reason I wanted to bring up that part specifically is because I saw a post about how it's an exact parallel for like the retaliation after October 7th, in like a small attack, like a self-defense kind of attack, and then like a fuck ton of retaliation, insane military response from Israel. Like that's a direct parallel.
And like the continued assault, and like now Israel's literally starving Palestinians in Gaza. Like,
While calling it a famine.
Well,
Yeah.
Like, this is not man-made
Yeah.
starvation.
Right.
it's just, and like Palestinians like haven't even been able to fight back this entire time. So they've
Right.
just continued that. And it also reminds me of like police brutality, you know, like someone reaches into their pocket for a comb or something and then they
Right.
get shot dead, or you talk back to the police and you get stepped on until you die, you know, like it's just this brute force and this insane level of retaliation in response to the tiniest little bit of fight back. And I don't know, it's
Yeah.
fucked up.
Yeah.
Straight fucking brutality.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think this also relates to another quote from Sunrise where Snow like directly calls like the Hunger Games like quote unquote reparations
Mhm.
for like the Dark Days.
Mhm.
And so I'll read an excerpt from this. The recap opens on the reading of the card, which I watched from home with Ma and Sid in the spring. A little girl dressed all in white, the picture of innocence, lifts the lid on a wooden box filled with envelopes. They widen the shot to include President Snow, who intones, "And now, to honor our second quarter quell, we respect the wishes of those who risked all to bring peace to our great nation." He leans over and carefully selects the envelope marked with a 50 and reads the card inside. On the 50th anniversary, as a reminder that 2 rebels died for each capital citizen, every district will be required to send twice as many tributes to the Hunger Games, 2 female and 2 male. In this doubling of reparations, we remember that true strength lies not in numbers, but in righteousness.
Doubling of reparations. Yeah. As I was looking for quotes, I was like, wow, that using the term reparations was just so intentional on Colin's part. So
Also, that the fact that Snow says like the true strength is not in numbers, like he knows what the risk is. He
Right.
knows what the threats against him are, and he's trying to quell that. And not only like kill more children, but affect more families
Right.
directly. Like you see when
that weakens
Haymitch,
resistance.
yeah, and you see when Haymitch gets back, they have like literally a mass funeral
Yeah.
for the tributes and his family who's killed, and then Wyatt's dad who
And Lenore Dove too.
and Lenore Dove, all these people who died just in District 12 and like died, not just were affected, but like directly were killed by
Yeah.
this specific Hunger Games. So
Yeah. Yeah, super intense. I think another important message from all of the books in general, with like the whole remember who the real enemy is
yeah.
is super important. And I was remembering because yesterday we actually did this workshop. We have a workshop on like political polarization and like community organizing, and it made me think of like remember who the real enemy is, because the way that we lay out the workshop is basically it's like a role play scenario where we split people into 3 groups, and the scenario is that it's a mining town and destruction is being caused from the mining, and there are 3 groups of people. So there's the company who's doing the mining and its supporters, people who are like, we need the mining for XYZ, people who are actively resisting against the mining, and people who are doing relief work like fixing broken homes, helping people with health issues, like direct kind of post relief work. And one of the tactics that we get to in the role play scenario is the tactics of the company and the people in power doing the harm is to pit those two other groups against each other by saying, okay, the people who are protesting, y'all are radical, or you're too loud, you're too crazy. Like, oh, the people doing relief, y'all are doing the great work. Like, that's what we need. You're being so peaceful. And by pitting those two groups against each other, which works, it works in order to divide us, right? Like, that is what wins them the power. And instead, like, if we remember who the real enemy is, if both those groups realize, like, hey, we're all just trying to protect our communities. At the end of the day, either because I'm trying to help fix someone's house that was destroyed or because I'm trying to stop the root of the problem, like, we're all trying to solve the problem. We're all trying to care for each other. And if we all remembered who the real enemy is, like, there wouldn't be those conflicts and those like oppositions between each other. And that comes up directly in Catching Fire, when Haymitch tells Katniss to remember who the real enemy is when she's in the arena, because when you're put in the arena, your enemy doesn't become the capital. Like, it always is, but your enemy becomes the people who are actively trying to kill you, the other tributes from the other districts. And so she has to consistently remind herself, like, no, my enemy is Snow, my enemy is the capital.
And then she also remembers at the end when she's supposed to kill Snow and she kills Coin instead,
Right.
that she is the real enemy because she's upholding the system and the system is the enemy, right? Like,
Right.
I think that's a good message too, is like, yes, Snow directly is a great villain, but he's not the main proponent, you know, like it's the system that he
was upholding.
and then Coin was going to uphold.
Yeah.
So.
Not only upholding, but also had a very large hand in creating, I
Yeah.
would say too. And I think even just like the way that she's been reminded of this at like multiple times throughout the series, like, you know, before she blew up the arena and Catching Fire, and Finnick like flashes the bracelet and is like, hey, like, remember, you know?
Yeah.
And just like those like specific like boiling points, I would say.
Yeah.
I also, it just that made me think of like people now who were trying to remind us who the real enemy is, and like what you just said reminds me of like Kendrick Lamar's halftime performance when they're like, you're too loud, too crazy, too ghetto. Or like the part where he says like, the revolution is televised, you picked the right time but the wrong guy. Like, there are people now currently, and like Suzanne Collins is one of them by coming out with Sunrise on the Reaping, but like there are people in mass media making art trying to remind us and show us who the real enemy is. So this is us reminding you who the real enemy is, reminding
each other.
reminding you to fight, and that the revolution is going to take a long time, but it has to be all of us and it's worth it. And yeah, do you guys have any other closing thoughts?
No, I love these books. If you haven't read them and you've listened through this whole episode, like, just to hear our thoughts, which I think our thoughts are great. Okay, so hearing people say like that they've been radicalized by these books, like, first of all, this kicked off a huge dystopian trend in pop culture, and this like notion of like rebellion has been a theme in media for a long time. Like, think about like Star Wars and like rebelling against the powers that be. Granted, a lot of those have turned into like military propaganda in another way, but that's for a different a different time. I think that these books did a really good job of making it really clear like who the enemy is, how these systems are upheld, how we fight back, how long it takes, and how it takes all of us. And so those are my biggest takeaways and like things that I wanted to say about these books, because I have found myself like since Sunrise on the Reaping came out, like just bringing it up over and over in our work at Yucca and in our work doing climate justice work and trying to organize people and educate people. Like, it's all so relevant. And I think everyone should read these books. If you're a reader, there's audiobooks. Definitely watch the movies at least. We could do a whole other episode just on the differences between the books and the movies, some of which I like, some of which I don't like.
Same.
So yeah, those are my thoughts. Love the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
I think we just scheduled our 2 extra bonus episodes.
Yes, I think so.
I think so too.
Yeah, let us know if you guys want us to do another bonus episode where we just analyze the books in general, like the characters, like little motifs that we notice, like a bunch of that stuff.
I have a whole like tabby color for Mockingjay themes throughout the whole. We didn't even get into that, the Mockingjays, and how that's a symbol of the rebellion,
but you guys are gonna have to come back for that one. So yeah, thank you all for listening. Please keep listening to the podcast. Like this on whichever platform you're listening to it. Subscribe to our YouTube, our Spotify. You'll get notifications, Apple Music. We're going to be doing another book club episode soon, like a main one about fiction books that have informed our activism. So please, if you have ideas for that, let us know. Between all of us, we definitely have a lot to talk about. But if you guys have ones specifically you want us to read and analyze, send them our way. Comment on our Instagram. We're really easy to contact. So yeah, thank you guys all for listening. Bye.
Bye. Also, if you made it this far, send this link to 5 of your friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you guys can talk about what you learned and analyze it together. Yeah. Okay, bye.